Okay. I'm going to get things started and kind of shared where they need to share. And Molly and I are going to get started in just a minute. And I know sometimes it takes a second for this to pop
Yeah.
up. So,
And do you mind sharing this on my page too? Because I don't have any. I don't have
I'd
any
be
buttons
glad
on the side.
to.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And it'll just
Something.
be a minute. And this would be a good place for me to find the comments too, which is great.
And I just realized I did not bring my laptop in, so I am flying blind.
It's cool. All right.
And while everybody is joining in, if you wouldn't mind shooting us a thumbs up or letting us know if you're having any problems with the audio, and we will get started in just a moment. Oh, wow.
Okay, Molly, I tagged you, so it should show up. You might just check.
Okay. So,
oh, there you are. Come on, I'm sorry. Okay, and I'm here.
Yay!
Sorry about that, you guys. Took a little bit longer to set up. Hello, Jill. Hello, Danette. Okay, a couple people. Oh, I love seeing those names on here, and I'll keep an eye on the comments. But welcome. I'm Jessica. I'm here with Molly Maloney. Our Wednesday night chat. We should have a good name for that. Our Wednesday night chats, but Ask a Medium, right?
Ask a Medium. Yeah.
And tonight we're going to be talking about psychic kids. Oh, I just realized.
And let's check the
How
audio.
How am I sounding
again,
over there? I don't have my headphones yet.
I'm getting a little bit of a muffle on this end, so let's make sure everybody can hear us.
Okay, cool. Sorry, a little sporadic start there. I'm putting my headphones in now.
Christmas, I forgot that too. Should I grab my headphones?
I don't hear feedback on your end.
Okay.
But let's see how it does with mine, and then if we need them, we'll grab them. And this will give everybody a chance to hop on. We're talking psychic kids tonight, so if you have questions, go ahead and start kind of putting those questions there. And let's see how the feedback is now, Molly. Does it seem better for you?
I think so.
Okay,
maybe.
cool.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah, let's find out. How do we sound, everybody? Let's see. Okay, Jill says she's excited for this episode. So
awesome.
So this topic has come up quite a bit, I know, with a lot of intuitives that I am in circle with. And it has come up in my life, but this isn't something that I feel like I have a lot of experience as in myself as a kid. And I know that may be different for you. I remember feeling spirit, but I didn't know that's what I was feeling until I hit 30 and really awakened to this gift. So, for me, I remember the feeling of feeling like I could tell someone was around me. I didn't see them. And I know now that some people's kids are seeing them or having other experiences that I did not necessarily have. But Molly, what was your experience like as a kid?
My looking back, my experience was similar to yours. I wasn't really aware of what was going on for me, as we've discussed several times, until much later in my life. But looking back, I always was tapped into something a little different and always had an awareness. There was no outlet for me, though. And I realized, again, looking back and remembering growing up, I was an only child. My dad was in the military. My mom was really focused on being a military wife, and so there wasn't a lot of outlet for me. And I think it really ties into creativity in general. Being able to be creative and really having a space to be in one's truth. And I think part of that is just the era that I grew up in. And then, the environment I grew up in, it wasn't really something, there wasn't a whole lot of opening for it. But, I definitely remember, being very in tune and very tapped in and very curious. I had a concept of what, magic and spirit were. I was always very keenly aware of the idea of ghosts and seemed to be, extra sensitive, throughout my entire life. I think I was much more, that empath piece was definitely kicking, much more openly than the medium piece, just because there might have been more of an outlet for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And something you said kind of set with me, like there wasn't really space for it.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is us growing up in the 70s and 80s, like that time there was a lot of fear around this type of thing. Like it was all put into like very negative media. So those people our age who are having kids, this could be very scary for them because there's so much negative media around it, when really it's helping them to see the value in it and really helping kids acknowledge what's happening. Whereas for us, it was more shut down. Like, that's not real. Don't worry about it. It's not real. And that really was what we were told, like, because they didn't want us to be so scared of like poltergeist. I'm sure that's on my end. Right. So, and that's not real.
Right.
So
Well,
now we can help kids realize it's something useful. Sorry, go ahead.
no, all I was gonna say is I think, our parents came out of a generation where children, the ideal for raising kids was still very much that seen and not heard, and so there really wasn't an outlet for their voice and their exploration and their discussion and questions, and so my parents were kind of that's how they were raised, and so I think it was probably a little looser, but I feel like you know as an adult with kids that my cousins kids, children of friends, because I don't have any children of my own, other than my fur babies who are very aware of spirit, but that's a whole other show. But I feel like there is more of an opportunity for us to be stewards for them than perhaps our parents were for us.
Yeah, and for my niece and nephews, my sister and her husband are military, and they're like, let these kids be very free and very expressive. So they are able to be very expressive in their lives. Now I'm able to hold that space, not that they aren't, but in a different way. Like for me, I connect to the intuitive piece, to the medium side of piece, the impact, the psychic ability. So they know that's the kind of work I do.
Right.
So these kids, when they're having experiences, and to be honest, I don't know what level they know of the work that I do, which is very interesting.
Right.
But they know that I deal with crystals. They know that I will clear space with crystals, and I will bring in good energy with crystals, and that I will talk to the angels and ask the angels to support me. I talk to them in their language. I always want, in talking with adults or kids, like in their language is really important. So talking, if it's God or if it's the universe, like, what is it for you and your family? That is a great way to word things. But I know for my experience with new kids, like my youngest niece and nephew are 7 and 8. And they just 2 weeks ago, I mentioned it on one of our talks, they came and said, well, I'm seeing, and the other said, I'm hearing. Like, I'm seeing shadows, is what Gemma said. And then Jax was like, and I'm hearing voices. Like, and it made me think of how it sounds like a television. My cousin Shannon has had experiences most of her life, and she would hear like a TV and think she was losing it. But it's those spirit voices whispering, kind of getting our attention and our clairaudience opening. And so I, opened the door. Like, I was like, what do I tell people to do? What do I tell people to do when this happens with their kids? I had to really like hold on. And I was like, okay, I sat with it and I was like, oh yeah, tell me about that. Tell me more. And I'm like, what do they look like? Or, what did you hear? And they're like, how do we make it stop? I'm like, well, you just ask your guardian angel to come in and to, tell them to go away, that you don't want to communicate with them. And I haven't gone more in depth into that. Like,
Right.
almost want to allow it to come up organically. Because I didn't shut it down, I feel like the door's open for them to discuss that with me.
Right.
And they, mention it in front of their parents, so they're open to talking about it, but it's not real. But I told them, oh, well, you call in your spirit team. So that's one thing of helping kids learn those things. Does that make sense?
I think we're breaking up a little bit.
It might be frozen. Are you frozen? Okay. See, I'm gonna see. And how are we sounding? I know Sunny said we were sounding better. Let me move a little bit and see if it's my feedback. Can you see me okay?
I can see you perfectly.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. How are we sounding? Okay. You guys, I know several of you out there have some kids of your own that have been having experiences. So if you have things that you want to ask or comment about, please let us know. I know that we have a couple of friends that even, Molly, teach kids, psychic kids classes. I have not gone to any of those or seen how they are, but I'm sure they're great. I've always wanted to help like different age groups, and I feel like it's really important for the parents to be involved, whether they're intuitive or not. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think, there was a really great television program that was hosted by Chip Coffey. Chip Coffey, I can't remember the other psychic that came on, that was actually called Psychic Kids, that ran for a couple of years. That was really a great, it was great entertainment, but it also broached the subject of how do you deal with small children that are dealing with psychic gifts? How do you empower them and help them to deal with their fear? And a lot of these children were dealing with things that, we're talking seeing spirits in the physical, and seeing them, all times of the day and night, having spirit invade their space and their rooms. And so, I mean, it was really extreme examples, but at the same time, I mean, they really presented amazing tools for how to, yes, they were dealing with extreme examples, but they absolutely, all those tools and techniques absolutely apply to children that are dealing with, just basic intuition questions, or basic empath, or, they may be seeing things in their mind's eye, or seeing, hearing things. It's still really applicable to kids of all sorts of psychic levels and types of gifts. And I know those. I believe that you can catch those episodes on YouTube. If you ever have a want to check those out, they are absolutely there. I mean, even the clips that they offer are really valuable. And they actually worked in tandem, not only with Chip, who was helping them with their gifts, but they were also working with a therapist, a psychologist, to help them with the emotional piece, with that fear, with, one of the things that I think is really difficult for kids is that, these gifts can be very isolating, because they're having experiences that their friends, their siblings, their family members aren't having. And so, there is the piece where we want them to feel free and empowered to express that, but then they also need the connection too, because they're having a very unique experience that most people walking out in the world can't relate to. So we want to support them on an emotional level as well.
I loved watching that show. I used to watch it all the time when it was on TV. I'm so glad you mentioned it. I really enjoyed, and of course there was always the mysterious piece to it, but I feel like he did such a great job of walking them through their gifts and being right there beside them while they're feeling it, which is important, I feel like, in teaching anyway, to be with that person and just, we've worked together in tandem where we, bring through the same spirit. So as a teacher, he's able to connect in or link in. What do we call that? A double link? So we call
Yeah,
it
yeah. And validate what they're experiencing,
yes.
which is huge. Yeah.
Yes, and I feel like that happens often, that we double link more often than not,
Yes. Yes.
Feeling experience. So, for you all that are intuitive on your own, you can tap into that energy when you're asking them about that. Well, tell me about what you're experiencing. What do you see, feel, hear? Keep in mind that, just like we compare, like the kids compare, like different, like we as adults do that. So remember that they may be getting their intuition differently from you, but really like connecting to not just them, but the energy that they're feeling is a really good tool. And also helping to teach them how to feel it, to see it, to hear it, to describe it is very helpful. And that gets them more comfortable and it gets them familiar with that energy, where they're then able to tell if it's a different feeling energy.
Right.
And that familiar helps to get rid of the fear. I mean, even for me as an adult learning this at 30, I lay in bed some nights and I'm like, what is this energy? Like,
right.
This is real intense. My heart's beating out of my chest. I'm like, well, I must be safe. So I'm going to kind of lean into this. And we need to teach them how to do that. And to be like, you know what? I'm trying to freaking sleep. Go away.
Right,
so,
yeah.
And I'm also hearing, I don't know why, but I am hearing like having something of comfort, like almost like a teddy bear or something that they can have as a security. I don't know why I'm getting that, but I'm being shown that is an important tool. Maybe it's like a representation of like their guide, their spirit team in some way.
Right. And one of the things that just dropped in for me that I think is really important is that, as a child, so many of the stories that I've heard are that you have children that are dealing not with child spirits but with adult spirits. And so, they're one of the things that we as intuitive development mentors teach adults is that you are in control. You have the ability to draw your boundaries, to tell a spirit that you don't feel comfortable with, that you don't want to communicate, that you're not communicating at that time, that they need to come back, and to set the boundaries to make yourself feel comfortable in your space. And I think that this is kind of a tricky situation. And I especially, we talked about the era that we grew up in. That was I grew up in an environment where whatever the nearest adult said, you were supposed to obey and listen to, because you're supposed to respect adults. Well, this is a bit of a tricky situation if you have a child that is dealing with an adult spirit and giving them the empowerment that they need in order to draw the boundaries that they need to be able to draw in their space in order to feel safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that honestly, that spirit boundary, I just kept hearing how important it is for them to learn that boundary in general.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
it's
And
a hard, I mean,
yeah, I think it plays in very much to, parents empowering their children now for live adults. I don't want to hug that person. I don't feel safe around that person, to be able to draw
yeah.
those boundaries with their physical person, with real life people, the real live adults in their life. I think that ties in very tightly, and it really is the key is, empowering your child to draw those boundaries, whether the adult entity is dead or alive.
It's just the new way.
Absolutely. It's and it's that empowerment, I think, is so important, as well as feeling like they can talk to their parents about their experiences, that's an open door, even if the parents don't have abilities themselves. That the child still feels like they can go and talk about what they're experiencing, I think, is huge.
Absolutely. And I want to also touch base on something that I want to say hi to Amy. she just popped on as well. And she's been sometimes picking up energy from her children, and they will, know things that they're getting ready to say. So there's that side of, being an intuitive and having the kids that are intuitive and having that empath, but also thought system that is like aligned. You all are so connected that you're getting information telepathically.
Absolutely.
Have you had that experience?
Oh, yes. And I think there's, I had that experience just as an empath, with, you're linked in so tightly that you can anticipate what the person that you're talking to is going to say. Sometimes, when the phone is going to ring. I used to have experiences all the time where somebody would pop into my mind out of nowhere, and I would hear from them within 24 hours. All of that stuff happened all the time. But there's also a really unique empathic bond between parents and their children, specifically mothers and their babies, that happens, I think, naturally, just as as kind of an effective nature. Mothers and their children are tied so tightly anyway that there is an intuitive bond as well, that we see that really strong, cool link.
And I'm hearing too that as both sides strengthen their intuition, this is just kind of coming in for me, but as both sides are becoming more aware or seeing their intuition, that bond's even stronger for that. For that happening, which is very, very powerful. And I kind of giggled in the beginning because they're showing me like, don't you remember all those times your mom knew you did something? Like, even as a young kid, like coming around the corner and being like, why'd you put that there? Like, you weren't even anywhere near. And this has come up for me a lot over the past year. Like, I keep hearing that mother's intuition is just heightened. Like, it's not that mother's intuition is, something only mothers have, or like intuition is something only mothers have, but that it just heightened when you have that bond. Super heightened.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, so funny to know, like, it's like the eyes in the back of your head, that sixth sense that we have as parents. I say we, but I'm not a parent.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's funny because I remember thinking
Let's
back
see.
to my mother.
What questions do you all have? I know that one that I've been getting. I think I have a little feedback. I'm sorry.
I think we're on a little bit of a lag.
I'm so sorry. I may have cut you off because I didn't know, because I had pause on my end.
I think it's we have a little lag that's causing some technical fun things.
Tell me what you were saying. I would love to hear what you were saying.
No, all I was saying was that my mother definitely had that mother's intuition, but it was also very much a thing with my aunt. My aunt also had that connection with me, as did my grandmother on my mother's side. They all had that kind of intuitive thing where if I was up to no good, they definitely knew about it.
Yes, and so a couple of other people that I've been talking to, they've been talking about how their kids have been coming to them, which is a little bit different, whereas the parents know, but their kids are coming to them with experiences they've been having. Some of these kids aren't wanting to sleep on their own. I'm kind of switching gears altogether, just so you know. I did kind of just flipped it and just had this thought pop in of how to help kids in their own space. Feels like it's very important. We talked about the describing it and the talking about it, but there've been several that won't sleep on their own.
I think that this is going to be a little bit more difficult to address for parents that don't have intuitive gifts, because it's kind of the blind leading the blind at that point. And especially if the parents are feeling fear around what the kids are experiencing, and kids are so in tune and so aware. It's kind of hard to, try and help the child deal with their fear of the parents in fear, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the biggest piece is understanding the amount of control that the intuitive has. And we've talked about this, in relation to our own individual gifts, but, understanding, that we have that power to say, I'm not talking to you, leave me alone. You're not allowed in this space. Creating that sacred sanctuary space, and allowing the child to use their voice and say no with an entity, and giving them that power, I think is really important, to help them feel like they have some control in the situation, because that's really what fear is all about, right? Not having control and not knowing what's going on. So, giving them the ability to say no in their space, I think is really, is a big step in helping their kids combat their fear and feel safe in their own space.
Yeah, and I am reminded too of just the feeling in my body of when spirit is near, and that is a big, intense feeling for me. So, and I just want to say that we do have we do have a psychic kid watching. Okay, so that they're watching us tonight. So I'm so grateful
Awesome.
to have Jill and Ava watching tonight. So it's good. So if Ava has questions, like please ask. But I'm thinking about the feeling that I have in my body when I feel spirit near. And it's not like I can tell all, at that immediate moment when I feel that intense energy, and I feel it pumping in my heart,
Mm-hmm.
which, studying the chakras, we often connect through our heart space, and I feel that intensity, and it's so overwhelming. Well, you've taken, I'm in the dark, you've taken away my light. So my senses of feeling and hearing are much stronger because you've taken away kind of my sight in a way, so it's heightened those. So I feel that energy even more intense. So I can imagine for me, even if I'm not laying next to somebody, I'm not as comfortable by myself because it's just me feeling it. Nobody else is experiencing this, and I feel like I don't have my safety net. When in all reality, it's just a feeling in my body, and getting to know and ask questions about that feeling. Well, why am I feeling this?
Right.
Is this my emotion, or is this the emotion of maybe a spirit that is trying to get my attention?
Right.
Is this maybe the emotion of someone else that I'm in the same room or the same house with? Like, starting there with what are you feeling? What does it feel like? And asking questions and being curious, like just like you're curious with anything, well, I want to learn about this. Ask yourself, and you have that inner voice, that dialogue, that you have that thought going in your mind. So when you are sitting and you're asking yourself questions in your mind and you get answers back, that's how the universe works. That's how God works. That's how our team works. Whatever you want to call that, like, you build your spirit team. You
Mm-hmm.
decide who you want there. If you want grandma there, then you bring grandma. And you talk to grandma and you tell grandma what you need. Have a spirit person that you decide is your person. Like, I talk to my guides, but it's real easy for me to connect to my mom and dad, and know that I'm safe there. So finding where that safety is with the spirit you're comfortable with, and asking them to be there with you when you're feeling that out. And that just kind of dropped in just now.
Yeah. No,
As
and
info that would be helpful.
that makes absolute sense. It's I think it's part of that empowerment thing too. Not only giving them the space to draw their boundaries, but to, help them be aware of what they can call on to act as an assist when they're uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
And helping them talk about what those are new skills that I think we are all learning as a culture and a society. That's not something that people did when I was little. We didn't talk about our feelings. We didn't get curious. We were just like, brush that to the side and go on to whatever's next. If you're afraid, just muscle through it and rub some dirt in it. But we don't have to do things like that anymore. So we, helping them to build a dialogue with themselves about what they're experiencing so they can, self-soothe and self-calm, those kinds of things.
Right. And you're right. We weren't taught that. Like growing up, it was don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. And I have to watch myself and be like, oh, wait, that is not the answer. But
right.
And like you can feel that, but it's not okay to act that way. Let's talk about why you're feeling that. Why are you angry? Like, what are you really angry about?
Right.
So,
right.
or what are you really, really feeling it? And I'm just learning that. So I hope that these kids can learn it so much earlier than I have. And they have, for them to come and express and say, I'm sorry about this. I was mad about this. I'm like,
right. Yeah.
Did you learn that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. But it is hard to describe sometimes what you're feeling and to understand it. So taking a deep breath and asking for it to just go away for a minute. We have that much, I want to say control, but I don't even think it's control is the right word. We have that much will over our spirit. Like that inner spirit, our inner soul, we get to help it along the way so we can listen and experience that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Jill said, yes, snaps all around.
Yeah. Yay.
And I'm just trying to think of, okay, I'm being told to talk. I was like, what else should we talk about? And they're saying art, which no surprise this comes up because I do, I do have a couple people that are listening that do spirit art. Mm-hmm. And art is a great outlet to draw it to because if you think about how we each see things, some people see it all in color. Some people see, blobs. Some people will see very perfect detail. So like using art in any way. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing is as they're talking about it, as they're coloring, they're able to have this automatic, just like how everything like started for me in the shower. I'm doing my automatic and they're doing their automatic by drawing, and you can ask questions and more will come out that way too. Like it just is there's more of an expression or able to see, feel, and hear it differently is what I'm being told.
Well, and I think especially when you're dealing with smaller children, you're dealing with a limited vocabulary and a limited ability to really express what they're seeing. So, giving them a piece of paper and markers or crayons or whatever it is to help them, start to get it out on paper is a great doorway into their experience and what's going on with them if they're dealing with spirit.
Yeah, and I want to also talk about like releasing any fear. There is no fear here at all. There's nothing to be scared of.
Well, and the, really driving home that even if it feels very scary, there's nothing that can harm them. I know there's all sorts of, wacky TV shows on now that show all sorts of craziness. But I think that's also, I think there's fact there, but there's also intention,
Mm-hmm.
Not only is there the fact that you can't harm me, but there is also, you are not going to harm me. I'm setting that boundary, using my intention, my will to enforce that. And giving kids the helping them understand that they have that, magic power in their bag to use whenever they need to with spirit.
So we did get a question, and it's how would you handle a situation where one parent is intuitive and the other one dismisses their gifts? And for some reason can't tell who this comment's from, and that's not a big deal at all. I don't need to know that. But I just want to acknowledge this question and say that's real tough. I want to say that's a tough situation because there's a disrespect there. Like when I think about that, that is a disrespect. And on my end, I would, one, make sure that you have a community of people that do trust you and you trust them, that you have a circle that does believe in you and can empower you in some way. And it feels like to me, like discussing and saying, it really bothers me when you dismiss it. It's okay if you don't believe it, but I do, and it's important to me. And if this has to do with the child, because I kind of picked up that it may be dismissed in the child as well, if that's the dismissing, or even either way, both relationships, it's important to try to be on the same page and to find a way and maybe a language that you all can use together to empower it and not shut it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't believe the same thing. You are still in some way using the same language to empower it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, it's a conversation that that probably needs to be had. And there's so people that are dismissive. There's so many reasons that can happen. Whether it is, they're one of those, my dad used to say all the time, I'm from the state of Missouri. He's not, but I'm from the state of Missouri. I'm from the show me state. He needed to see it, in order for it to be real. I know a lot of people that are like that. I know a lot of people too that dismiss things out of fear, and so I think it's important to try and get some understanding as to where that dismissiveness is coming from. But just like you said, that, it is maybe not intentional, but ultimately a lack of respect for somebody else's experience, especially a child. It starts to, because a child that is shut down by a parent with a dismissiveness like that, that's a door that's closing. They don't have access to that parent when they're experiencing something that they don't understand or they have fear around. So it's hard on the child. And I don't think, it's not one of those things. If you've got a parent that's really dismissive of how a child is feeling, it's very hard for that to be, just in one area. I think that's one of those things that has a tendency to bleed into all sorts of emotional areas. So, any way we can open a dialogue around that and gain some understanding and try to help that parent understand that, just because they're not feeling that thing, that they still need to be available for conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't matter if you all are even together or not. Like it comes down to being, trying to be on the same page in general for that child.
Right.
Would be really important. There's something I was going to add to that, and it just went.
It happens.
It does. It just went away. It was there. Because I was thinking about just the situation and the kids and the vulnerability. That was what it was like. This opens them up, just like you were saying, like where the comfort level, like I wasn't always comfortable being vulnerable, so that was something that is very difficult. So shutting that piece down shuts the door to many, many, many things. They can't be vulnerable about this. What else can't they be vulnerable about?
Absolutely. If a child can't talk to a parent about the weird spirit that's standing at the foot of their bed in the middle of the night, where does that line? Where does that end? What else are they not going to be able to? What other difficult, uncertain, shaky, gray areas? Vulnerable areas. Maybe fear-related areas are they not going to be able to talk to their parents about?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So the other thing that came up that I was thinking about was one way that I did work with the energy with Jax a little bit. So Jax, I was over at the Cooper's house, and both kids, and I may have mentioned this another night, but I'm going to share it. And if you all have other questions, please ask. But Jax, like scared of the dark, okay, but also like both kids did not want to go in the basement. Mind you, the playroom is down there. Their brother's usually down there, and neither one of them would go. And it was like back to back that they said it. And I was like, okay, what's going on in the basement? Like, what energetically is happening down there?
Right.
So I asked them both. They were like, I'm not going down there. And I was like, all right, go get all the crystals. Go get the crystals. So
Right.
they did. So they all have crystals. I may or may not have taken a huge stick of selenite from them, but they have like rose quartz. We've got selenite. We've got amethyst and citrine. I think all those are the ones that we have in the kids' room. Sorry. So I set them up with their crystal grid. And so we got all the crystals and we went around the house and we cleared the energy together. So I called, and just said, God, please clear this, area, allow it to be in a high vibration, allow the angels to protect it, call in, however, like teach them to clear the energy. And he had his wand, and it was really in the dark that it bothered him. And I remember that, like, the dark was hard, like, keep the light on, please, because, or the TV, like, even to like distract me, from feeling that, something that gave me comfort. So I just told him, like, this is your wand and you can use this, and just sweep it under the bed and be like, go away. If you're feeling that, you just use your wand. And these are very, very useful tools to help with energy and to help transmute the energy. So having even a stone maybe would be very helpful. But we also, after we did that, and I don't know if it was the same night, I feel like a different time we were dealing more with the dark than that one. That one was more like the energy in the house and the basement, and anything can shift that. People coming in and out of your house can shift that. The energy can change. So it's not that it was the house, okay, but something energetically had shifted, so we needed to clear it out. Now, dealing with the dark, I went, and so what I tried to do was to stand there with him and turn out the lights. Woohoo! Did not work. It was like screaming bloody murder, and I was like, okay, well, that was a good try. I was like, I know I was right by the light switch. Like, we were right by the door, right by the light switch. So I know that it's that intense feeling of what's not physically there.
Right.
And I feel that all the time. I will walk through my house and be like, oh, nope, not right now.
Right.
Sorry. Later, another day. So it's okay. Like, I would let them use their voice in that way too, like speaking it out loud in that way and being like, I can tell there's somebody right here, right now, but I'm telling them I don't want to talk,
Well, and I love the idea of the wand. We're talking about empowerment. I mean, there's no greater symbol of empowerment in a lot of ways than a magic wand, which gives them, the ability to, even if it's sparking from their imagination within their space, to say, flick their wand, whether it's a wooden wand or a selenite wand or whatever it is, and clear this space, you're not allowed in here, or whatever it is. I think that's really, a really neat tool that might help a kid feel like they've got a little extra control in those times when they're feeling afraid.
Okay, so I want to kind of go into this because they're telling me talk about the fun stuff. So can we just talk about there really being unicorns?
Sure,
can we talk
absolutely.
about the fairies? Can we talk about the magical pieces that we are like, no, as fairy tales, but really it's just a different realm? Can we talk about that? Like, I remember being in class one time and they were like, some unicorn came in with you. And I was like, I have a unicorn? I have a dragon and a unicorn?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And like, fairies and all of I mean, all of the things, absolutely. Yeah, that there is a lot of
Leprechaun.
fun and a lot of make believe and a lot of ways to, engage a child's imagination with this, their creativity with this. And one of the things that I've got a friend of mine who's got, I think her daughter is 8, and she's really kind of you know given her license to be herself, including, how she's cutting her hair and, the clothes she's, allowed to dress herself. But, it's, she feels safe with her mother, for starters. B, she is, really leaning into her own art and the things that she thinks are cool. But, that dialogue is open about, the things that she experiences and the things that she imagines and creates or sees. It creates kind of a fun environment versus like fear-based.
Yeah. Well, and even, when we go to Lilydale, there's a fairy trail. So Lilydale, New York is a medium community. I think they have a psychic kids weekend.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Lilydale. Go look up Lilydale, New York, and look and see if they have a psychic kids weekend, because I think they do. So
Yeah.
medium community in New York, and they have a fairy trail. They have a labyrinth, and just some really neat things that are very magical, and I know friends that have even built little fairy gardens, which is so fun. So, and the imagination, like I want to touch base on this. You touch base on imagination, but the imagination and the intuition, the visual, the clairvoyant, all are here in this third eye chakra. Like that's where they stem from. So the imagination and the intuition, and those of you who work with me often know that I always say those two go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Your imagination just helps you build that visual. It's like, okay, I can trust my imagination to build it. And that's where the questions come in, like, well, is it my imagination? Did I make it up? No. You can make up things, but your imagination just helps you build your intuition.
Oh, absolutely. And it's to me, it is the number one way that I work with energy, that I direct the flow of energy, whether it's Reiki, whatever the energy work that I'm doing, it's visualization, and visualization, of course, is imagination. I mean, it is a tool, it is a muscle that you build working with your intuition and learning how to work with energy. So they absolutely are very closely linked.
Yeah, and it just helps you. It helps you to strengthen that visual in general by using your imagination. Build.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we were talking about kids and finding tips and tricks and techniques for how to deal with their fear. One of the things I use as a full-fledged adult is, I envision a pink bubble around my bed at night. That nothing can come in and bother me. But that starts with, it is a visualization. It's imagination. So,
that's great. I do the same thing. I use pink bubble a lot, and I was just thinking, like, a great way to put that bubble in your imagination is please go watch The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
We all need a dose of Glinda the Good Witch. So allow yourself to be Glinda the Good Witch and put yourself in that beautiful pink bubble, and maybe you're wearing that same dress too.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Why not?
Why not? So wherever you go, and I use visualizations a lot also, and I do my best. You will often hear me say, when I do a visual, feel and see or feel and hear also, because I use visuals so much, that's very easy for me to use my imagination. But the other two, hearing and feeling, come just as easily. So when I do a visualization, and I tend to go to the beach just because it is my favorite spot, but I will, visualize the sand and the ocean and the trees, and I'll visualize the person I want to see walking towards me, but I also like feel the breeze in the air and listen for the ocean and listen for the birds that are flying by, or feeling the, not just the breeze, but listening for the rustling and of the leaves in the trees. So using all of those senses, and together parents and children could do that visualization back and forth, which also helps to describe it. So sitting and doing visual, like short 5-minute visualizations as a meditation together is really powerful. And my niece loved that. Like, she wasn't feeling good one day and she had gotten her heart broken. Like, just somebody was so mean to her, and I can't even, she was so brokenhearted. And so I sat and I rubbed her temples because she had cried and her head hurt so bad. And then I walked her and was like, picture a field. Like, tell me what's in your field. Now, when I start this, I expect one thing, and they, like, all these things that people tell me, I'm like, wow, your field's really cool. That's
right.
Well, and she starts telling me, well, and, at first it's an I don't know, like, well, I don't know, because we tend to go into this, what's right, what's wrong, and so then I kind of guide her into it, like, well, is there a lot of grass? Do you see trees? And, do you see flowers? Yes. Well, I said, well, what color are they? Well, they're pink. Well, and I said, is your favorite color pink? And she said, no. And I said, well, that's Nana's favorite color. So it helped her to visualize, but there was a connection to spirit there that she might not have recognized had I not. But it was, something that I knew that I could give her and say, well, that's Nana. She's, with you, and she does connect to her. She likes to call her Diane, but because she didn't know her a year. But, helping them visualize, helping them describe, letting them guide it too, and telling you to picture their visualization. And maybe you do add in, the unicorns, maybe add in a unicorn. Go connect with the unicorns, go connect with the fairies, and go connect to grandma, and do all of that in a visualization or a feeling that energy, I think, is very, very helpful way to really spark things and to utilize it more often than not.
Right. And it keeps that conversation open. It keeps them engaged with you. You kind of develop a partnership with your child and exploring this together. And it's fun and magical. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, and maybe even, I was just reminded of like family prayer, or like sitting and we've taught for decades, you sit and pray. Well, you can pray and meditate, because the praying is the, thank you and asking for what you need, but the meditating part is the listening, and some of that can come into your visualization, because it will pop in, as a piece of what you're needing to listen or be shown.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this was fun. I love talking about this.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Did we answer all of our questions that came up?
We didn't have very many questions. I feel like there's a lot of curiosity around this, but not even sure of what to ask. So for those of you out there, if you come up with questions, you can reach out to Molly and myself. That will that we can add, those questions. We can answer them, or we can add them to things coming in the future. We've got some pretty amazing stuff coming up.
We do. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. I'm trying to think of all the things. Tomorrow night, Christopher Paul Hancock is going to be, he's doing a weekly residency with us on Soulfire. He's going to be doing his Astrolab Thursdays at 8 o'clock. He's going to be diving into all things astrology. So very, very excited about that. And then we've got our Saturday night regulars. We've got Kat Hill at 8 o'clock doing her musical performances. And then, of course, the lovely Jessica Tanselle is going to be doing her live readings at 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock on Sunday, I'm going to be doing diving into meeting your shadow. We're going to be talking about an introduction to shadow work, which I'm excited about. Is Molly Yunker back with us on Sunday morning?
I think so.
I think so too.
I think
if you
so.
haven't, I think she is. She's been doing them in series of 3s. I think we've got one more.
Cool.
But if you have a chance, if you have not participated in one of Molly Younger's Sunday morning resets, it's definitely worth dropping into. And of course, if you've missed any, you can always go back in our archives and check them out. They always hold their value. It's great stuff to dive back into, and she's just a treasure. It's wonderful stuff. And then next Wednesday, we're back with Dave.
Yes, earlier next Wednesday. So 7 o'clock instead of 8. So an hour earlier, because we want to let Dave, at least get a little rest,
Exactly. We're going to be talking about learning to trust. How do we know it's spirit, and learning to trust that our intuition, the answers and insights we're getting from our intuition. So that ought to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm super excited about all the things we have coming up, and I'm really enjoying these Wednesdays with you too, Molly.
Oh,
they're always fun.
It's always a lot of fun. Lots of fun. If you haven't, like Jess said, if you have any questions, feel free and send them to us. You can leave them in the comments, we may, like she said, add them into a future episode. Also, for anybody out there that's thinking about wanting to teach, has been thinking about something that they want to, if you have a skill, an art, something you make, something doesn't matter what it is. If you want to teach it, there's always room to do Facebook Lives here at Soulfire. You can go live at any time, impromptu, as long as there's not somebody else live and it's not between the hours of 7 and 10 p.m. Eastern. Otherwise, we will schedule you during those hours. Those are our scheduled slots, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and anybody can schedule an event. So reach out to Jessica or myself. We would love to have you share your wisdom, your art, your expertise. We're just happy that you're here with us.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you all for being here. And we look forward to seeing you. Well, we'll see you together next Wednesday, but I'm looking forward to all the things in between.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
Good night, you guys.
See you next time.